have buses and trains to get to work, to get to school, and to go home. Good evening and welcome to Face. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Niresh Eliyatambi. Public transport in Sri Lanka is a disaster. It has been a disaster for a long time, and successive governments really couldn't have cared less. We have the same transport infrastructure that we had perhaps 30 or 40 years ago. And to set this right is, of course, one of the many missions of the NPP government today. And to discuss all this with us, we have Dr. Bandura Dileepa Witharana, who is the chairman of the National Transport Commission. Dr. Dileepa, welcome back to the program. This is, of course, the first time you've appeared on our program after becoming National Transport Commission chairman. Of course, you are a transportation expert, and in that capacity you did appear on this show before, and of course you had some excellent critiques and suggestions, but now you're in the hot seat, literally, because it is your mission now to transform this incredibly ancient, chaotic system of public transport into something which is going to be efficient, timely, safe, equitable, all those aspects which we can then be proud of. And when an investor comes to Sri Lanka, they can look at it and say, well, our workers will come to work on time, there won't be issues, and the children will get to school on time. How do you begin? Because after decades of going nowhere, now you have to quite rapidly turn this around, and you're dealing with the same players, the same bus owners, bus drivers, bus conductors, and the train is the Sri Lanka Railways. You can't suddenly, fire a lot of them and put in new people. It doesn't work that way. You need to work with these people and transform. How are you going to do this?
I think first of all you need to understand what this is, right? So I think when I kind of came previously here, I was having some kind of an idea as a passenger, but now after becoming the chairman, I have studied this to a certain extent, and it's a mess. So I think first of all you need to understand what the problem is. There are many problems. I will name a few for you to understand, how big the problem is. Now, for example, we are responsible for the bus service, right? Public bus transport service, NTC, and it's a business. Now, even though we call it a public bus transport service, it's a business as well.
Yes.
So,
unfortunately,
and that is why there are no buses at night, and that is why the rural bus transport is almost broken down, right? And that is why there are all these races between like transport modes like SLTB, private buses. When it comes to private buses, the inter-province transport and intra-province transport, so there is competition. So that is one issue. So we need to make this a service. So how to do that? That is a question. And then there is another serious issue, that is that there is no single institute to coordinate all these transport modes. Train service operates independently. SLTB, the Sri Lanka Transport Board, operates independently. And then as a result of the 13th Amendment, when it comes to private buses, inter-province private buses belongs to NTC, National Transport Commission, and intra-province belongs to provincial councils. So there are 9 authorities when it comes to transport within the province. So so they at the moment operate, when it comes to SLTB, train service and the private bus service operates independently. There is some kind of a coordination when it comes to inter-province transport that is handled by us. So so we need a kind of a institution to do that, and the ideal institution to coordinate this is the National Transport Commission. And there is another issue, that is that when it comes to planning, so far I think our focus is on a kind of a particular small group. If I give you numbers, like, you know, I mean, our investment so far is about, let's say, highways, multimodal centers, right? When it comes to trains, like comfortable train services. But there is a huge amount of passenger population which belongs to another category that is not looked after. So if I give you numbers, this first category is about 6% of the entire passenger population, and our main focus was on that. And 94% of the passenger population were kind of, to a certain extent, left out. They were not looked after. So that's another issue. And maybe a fourth issue I can mention is passengers are not organized. They are individuals. They have fought a lot in public transport service. They are tired now, and they are hoping that the transport service will get better. And with that hope, they are waiting. They are not organized. I think we need an organized passenger movement in the country as a part of this solution. So that is from where we have to start. So we have started identifying the problem.
Now, Dr. Dileepa, this sounds like a lot of chaos, and it is chaos. I mean, you step onto the street and you see the way that the buses are run. It is chaos. We all know this. You go to the Fort Railway Station and you will hear the announcer saying, this train is late, that train is late, and so on. And none of these, there seems to be nobody who is driving change. You go to the Fort Railway Station, it hasn't changed in, since I was a boy, certainly, it's exactly the same. There's nothing different. Take a private bus, there's nothing different. But the world has gone forward. So now we know this. I mean, our people, Sri Lankans, millions go overseas and they go in those public transport, and they know what it is. But they come back here and it's still the same. So clearly we need the system changed. System change, which is what the people overwhelmingly voted for. And like you said, you have provinces which have powers, and you have the NTC, you have the Railways Department, Lanka Railways. They're all working as in silos, basically. But public transport is something, it's a national issue. If you don't have a proper public transport system, your country cannot move forward. You can't, as a society, you can't move forward. Investors won't come in. The brain drain will continue because people are just tired when, getting to work or school is such a hassle. So this is a dire national need. And to do so, you need one authority, one entity. So isn't it time that the laws were changed?
Yeah.
And this can be done quite quickly because, of course, this government has 159 seats in Parliament. So it's a matter of defining the new law and getting it drafted. So has this process started at all? Because clearly we need one entity.
Yeah. We have kind of proposed the government that we need a single entity to have a kind of a coordinated transport system, coordination in between all the modes. And so for that we need to amend the NTC Act, and I think that will happen soon. And when it comes to the NTC, there is another issue at the moment, because we are given two mandates at the moment. One mandate is to recommend policy for bus transport system. That includes SLTB, intra-province transport and inter-province bus transport. But trains are not a part of us. So we need to have all modes with us to go for a proper planning, proper policy and monitoring.
Now let me interrupt you there. You said trains don't come under the National Transport Commission. Who does Sri Lanka Railways come under? Obviously the Ministry of Transport, but that's a ministry. But as a professional institution like the NTC, doesn't Sri Lanka Railways actually come under some authority? No,
it's an entity on its own. I mean, I think
whatever. But you can't have that, can you? I mean, it's like saying that we have Sri Lankan Airlines, but if it were operating on its own without the Civil Aviation Authority of Sri Lanka governing it, I mean, there would be chaos.
Yeah, that's an issue. I think ideally trains should also come under the National Transport Commission when it comes to planning, and the operation can be handled by the railway department.
Right.
So I said that there are two mandates. So one is this policy recommendation mandate. The other one is we are also given the task of operating inter-province buses. So we are heavily involved with these operations. I mean, there are all these politics and issues to be sorted out, solved, and we are spending a lot of time and energy for that. And so the other mandate, the other work that is needed to be done by us is kind of neglected to a certain extent, because we are heavily involved with operations. So that also has to be sorted out. So we have suggested the government that we need this structural change when it comes to the National Transport Commission.
Now, structural change is something that in almost all sectors of Sri Lanka we need it. 2 weeks ago we had the chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism, and once again the structure is all wrong. It has been taken forward in an ad hoc manner by successive governments, and you basically, in the end, there is no national drive forward. So it's not there in tourism, it's not there in anything really. And this is something which the present government needs to address in all aspects. I mean, whether it is buying and distributing rice or salt, or whether it is developing our ports or fisheries, whatever. Basically, we need those governing institutions to be set in place. So this, of course, is something which in the next few months hopefully will get done.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Right. Now, let's look at some of the nitty-gritty issues. Now, when you step onto the street, you see buses racing each other. Why is that? What what possesses them to do that? Because after all, driving a huge bus is a difficult thing. And if a bus runs over a pedestrian, that bus driver has to spend some time in jail. And he may never be another bus driver again. So what's the reasoning behind this? And we hate the bus drivers because they drive like that. We hate the conductor, they hate us. That's the way it goes. But what's the underlying reality? What is it which has brought about this situation?
I think we need to have a sympathy towards the drivers and the conductors. They are a group at the moment with no kind of professional rights. They don't have EPF, they don't have ETF, they don't have a pension scheme. They don't even have a better place for rest because, under the law, if I talk about long distance driving, so you are supposed to drive 10 hours. If you are supposed to drive 10 hours, 14 hours, then you need a break of 10 hours, a proper break. But the condition of the long distance bus drivers when it comes to our country. There are no proper parking places for them to rest.
Yes.
Otherwise, for example, the NTC has built kind of restrooms in Bastian Mawatha. It's the private bus stand in Colombo.
Right.
But there's no place for them to park the bus. So they park buses somewhere else. So when you park the bus somewhere else, you can't come to Bastian Mawatha and rest. So what happens is that they are sleeping in the bus itself.
Yes.
Right, and no proper rest. And so I think that is something we need to do as well.
So the conditions that the drivers and conductors are operating under have to be improved. The various systems have to be improved.
And I came to know recently that even when you get a fully insured bus, drivers and conductors are not included.
Really?
Yeah, so we are thinking of discussing with the bus owners and the insurance corporations for them to consider them as well, as a part of the insurance scheme.
Well, that's absolutely necessary, isn't it?
Of course, yes. Yeah. And so that is one issue. So we need to, I think, sort out issues involved with all stakeholder parties.
Definitely.
There is a group of bus owners. They also have their own issues. And there is this group of drivers and conductors. They have their own issues. And when it comes to us, you and me, passengers, there are serious issues. So these are the things I think we need to pay attention parallelly, while we are thinking of a scientific plan to sort out transport issue, especially the issue you talk about, competition. So how to deal with competition is...
No, why do they compete? Now, my understanding is that the bus owners are separate and the bus drivers are separate. What is the relationship, the financial relationship between them?
Yeah, when it comes to private buses, it's a complex situation. Before coming here, joining as the chairman, I used to think that it's a simple equation. There are buses and drivers and conductors drive them. They get a payment in the evening, something like that, from the owner. But the issue is far more complicated. Reality is different. And so when it comes to inter-province bus transport, which belongs to us, we have a condition to say that a bus owner can't transfer the ownership to someone else. So if you have a permit,
the license of the
permit.
Of the route,
if you have a permit, then you need to keep it. But what happens in reality is that the permit is being sold to someone else and then to someone else. So maybe in the chain you have kind of 10 owners, right? So, but it doesn't stop there. So then what happens is they lease the bus to the, that's the practice, common practice at the moment. They lease the bus to the conductor and the driver. So they are supposed to give some fixed amount to the owner, the last owner, and then earn their whatever profit. So that is one reason for this serious competition.
So what happens is the driver and the conductor have to give a certain amount, let's say 10,000 rupees a day, to their owners, and the rest of it is their revenue.
Yeah.
So that's the reasoning behind them racing, because if they can do a couple of additional trips up and down, that's more revenue for them.
Yeah, that's one reason when it comes to the public transport. But the thing is, all have become competitors now. SLTB competes with private buses. When it comes to private buses, intra-province transport, private buses compete with inter-province transport buses.
Right.
So it's a serious competition, and so the solution lies there. So we need to end this competition.
After all, it's not a competition, it's not a Formula One race, it is supposed to be a public service.
Yeah.
Right. So you have your work cut out for you, because you're trying to effect a cultural change as well as a system change, and it's going to take a lot of work behind the scenes before this can happen. And it's not simply a matter of telling the police to enforce the law, because there are reasons why these people are actually breaking the law. So you have to sort out those reasons.
Yeah.
Right. So just traffic policeman stopping the bus and levying the fine isn't going to do it. So a lot of work behind the scenes. Right. Now, when it comes to training of bus drivers and conductors, how is that done? Is there any training at all beyond the heavy vehicle license that the drivers have?
I think the Department of Motor Traffic has its own training program. When it comes to NTC, we conduct our own training program. It's a 2-day training program. So even when it comes to provincial authorities, they also have their own training programs. Now the interesting thing is, so we have kind of looked at what has happened, right? So we train our drivers and conductors, but most of them take the certificate and leave the country, and who are in service seems to be a different group. So that is also something we need to address. Yeah.
Right. So the brain drain is hitting this industry as well, and heavy vehicle drivers are in high demand in many of the Western countries, including the UK. So this is something, again, very, very serious. Right. We need to take a short commercial break now. We are in conversation with Dr. Dileepa Witharana, who is the chairman of the National Transport Commission. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
ඒගොල්ලන්ට මේ අපිට කියන්න බෑනේ මේ අනේ හාල් ටික හොයලා දෙන්න කියලා.
අහන ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි උත්තර දෙන්න ඔබතුමාට අහපු ප්‍රශ්නෙට.
ඌ බලාපොරොත්තු කන්දක් දීලානේ ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ.
සදාකාලික ඔයගොල්ලන්ට කොරායි කිඹුල්ලු බල බලා ඉන්න පුළුවන්.
ජනතාව බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන අත් වශයෙන්ම ශනික යම්කි සහනයක්.
දැනට තියෙන රජයයි ඒ තිබිච්ච රජයන අතර අහසට පොළොව වගේ වෙනසක් තියෙනවා.
මොකද අපි දැක්ක මීට පෙරත් ඔය ජවනිකාව අපි දැක්ක ඔය නාට්‍ය අපි දැක්කා.
කලබල වෙන්න එපා රොෂාන්. අපි ඔය වගේ ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න ආචාර්ය උපාධි සහතික නැතුණා කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්ද?
අතේක පැහැදිලි කිරීමක් කරන්න අවශ්‍ය ඔබට තීරණය කරන්න පුළුවන්.
අපි හැමෝම එකතු වෙලා මේ රට හදමු.
දවස සතිය දිනවල සවස 6:30ට
Welcome back to Face. We are in conversation with Dr. Dileepa Witharana, who is the chairman of the National Transport Commission. Dr. Dileepa, we spoke a lot about bus transport and the various challenges. What about the trains? Now, again, train travel around the world has advanced by leaps and bounds. This is, after all, a mode of transport which is perhaps nearly 200 years old. The first trains in Europe and so on are that old. And every month, every year, we see advances in this technology. But our own Sri Lanka Railways has remained pretty much the same for the last several decades. You have the long distance trains and you have the commuter trains, which are mainly in the Greater Colombo area, and none of it seems to run properly. Trains are late, trains break down, locomotives catch fire, trains get derailed. That's the norm. Of course, many trains do get from point A to point B, but it's certainly not a mode of transport which you can rely on. And then, of course, you have a lot of safety issues, a lot of comfort issues, and lately there have been corruption issues which have come to the fore as well. How do you sort this out? Assuming, of course, that the government will place this under the NTC or whatever authority, and it will become one authority. And also in the backdrop, the policy needs to be seamless bus and rail transport. You need to be able to get off the train at your station and step into the bus, and not go and stand at the bus stop and wait for 15 minutes. I mean, that's a waste of time. So this is how it happens in other countries. This is how it needs to happen in Sri Lanka. What are the underlying factors behind our railways' dismal performance?
I think when it comes to railways, I don't have a lot of experience in that sector, in the sense that
it doesn't come under you at the moment.
Yeah, I am a train passenger, and I am aware of all the issues you have talked about, right? But under the NPP policy for transport, we were depending heavily on railway service to improve the public transport service, and there were proposals to have a frequent train service, not like ad hoc ones, and also to extend the railway tracks, increase number of to have a kind of a time plan from morning till midnight to have trains, and there were all these proposals. So I think we need to improve the train service, also in the sense that if you have to have a kind of a coordinated transport service, we can't just exclude trains and talk about other modes.
That won't work.
That won't work, because we are at the end dealing with one single passenger community. So they should be given the freedom to select whatever mode they want to take, and so we need to have a kind of a coordinated time plan, and we need to improve the train service so that passengers have the choice. So I personally is a person who prefers trains than buses. I have a liking. So, but since the service is not good, I don't have any other option than taking the bus service. So I think we need to improve the train service seriously if we need to improve the public transport service.
So now there are a lot of issues which any train traveler knows about. One thing is that trains are technically unreliable. They break down all the time. So clearly there's a problem of maintenance.
Yeah.
And then of course there is another problem of shortage of drivers, because especially around Aududu time and Christmas time and so on, we see, we're supposed to have more trains on the track, special trains, but very often we find that there are less trains because drivers have taken their annual leave or whatever, which they are of course entitled to. So there's clearly a problem of recruiting and training drivers. So these are not extraordinary problems, are they? I mean, this is something, if you're running any kind of transport service anywhere in the world, you basically have to deal with these things. But Sri Lanka Railways has not dealt with it properly for whatever underlying reasons I'm sure they have. So is it, do you feel that it's a problem of investment as well, that successive governments have not invested, have not given enough money in the budget?
I don't think that it's an issue of investment. I think it's firstly it's an issue of commitment and will. I think a lot can be improved without huge investments. So that's the issue when it comes to railway service. I think currently the government is looking at it to improve the train service, and even under this new Clean Sri Lanka project, public transport is included, and it includes train services as well. So it's, of course we know that I mean, if you are going to buy more engines and more compartments, it needs a huge investment. But before thinking about that, there are a lot that can be done within the existing situation. So we were talking about, I mean, when we were preparing the NPP policy, we were talking about maintenance, improve maintenance and strengthen the maintenance departments so that we repair them, quickly using our own resources. So and the railway infrastructure is also a problem at the moment. So I think we need to pay attention to all these aspects.
So a lot of things which one would assume would get done on a daily basis don't seem to happen, and this is strange. Now you spoke about repairs, so you would think, oh, maybe they don't have enough people, enough technicians, and possibly they don't. But I'm just looking at the Sri Lanka Railways website, and it says that for 1,561 kilometers of rail tracks with 72 locomotives and 78 power sets, that's 150. There are 17,634 employees, which is enormous.
Yeah.
17,000 employees, that's a small army of people. Where are they? What are they doing? Why aren't there enough railway repair technicians and drivers among these 17,000? So there seems to be a human resources problem here, where they've clearly recruited too many of certain categories and not enough of the important categories. So these are underlying issues, which means that Sri Lanka Railways needs to come under proper authority to look into these things. Because it's not, you can't blame the last government.
Yeah.
You have to say, for decades, this has been the norm, and it's just gone backwards, hasn't it?
I think we can't blame the previous governments. We need to fix this, and I'm quite hopeful and sure that we can do it. I mean, if you have a proper plan. Now I'm talking in general about the public transport. I don't know whether it is fair for me to comment on railways, because I have not studied it well at the moment, right? So now, for example, now people are very frustrated about the public transport system. They have complaints and they are angry, and when you go through social media you can see that the level of anger. So but only after entering this bus sector I came to know that the situation is complex. It's a kind of a web of issues. You can't just fix one issue because it's connected to another issue.
But these webs are woven by successive entities, governments, ministers, bus owners, railway unions. They sort of, they all look at the short term, and then they take a step which is actually not in the right direction, and then this is the web that they weave. So you are now going to have to untangle this very complex mess, isn't it?
Yeah, Niresh, if I can kind of explain the kind of plan we have, kind of a very rough plan we have. Now, there are certain measures we can use to untangle this and to fix this. Now, if I take, for example, permit conditions, I am talking about bus service, right? So when it comes to public buses, the bus owner is given a permit. There are conditions included in the permit. The owner has signed it to receive the permit. So these conditions, if you can apply these conditions, that will bring a kind of a huge change. It will discipline the private bus sector, right? And it can bring some decency. And in every permit says that you have the passenger should be given a ticket,
which
right?
Doesn't happen 90% of the time.
It doesn't happen, right?
Yes.
And you can't have a competition with other buses, and you need to stop the bus at the bus halt, not somewhere else, not in the middle of the road. Then the noise, the sound level has to be less than 80 decibels, right? All these conditions are mentioned in that. So if we can apply those conditions, it will bring a huge change, right? But the thing is, if you are going to apply it, you need to have the environment set before applying it. Otherwise, to fix a problem, you will create another problem. So that is one thing. Then another important measure we have to take is the coordinated timetables. We need coordinated timetables so that you can bring this race element out of the equation, right? So because then SLTB buses, private buses, all kind of run according to a timetable. So the private bus is given a time, it is sent, and then after 10 minutes or 15 minutes the SLTB bus goes. So you have to follow the timetable. And then there is another concept called rotated timetable, where if you say that a bus is given a peak time, and if the peak time is given to that particular bus all the time, it's not fair, no? So you have to rotate that timetable so that all buses gets a kind of a peak time as well, right? And that is another solution. And the third solution is the kind of ultimate solution, and we are considering it. So what you do is, now in a day you get a certain income. Let's say now we say that there are routes and there are corridors, right? Let's say the Puttalam corridor. So there are several bus routes going along that corridor. If we collect the income on a daily basis and distribute among the buses depending on the kilometers they have gone, they have driven, right? So then there is no need, because then the competition is no more there, shouldn't be there, because you distribute the income based on the distance you travel, not on the number of passengers you are kind of trying to get, right? Or the other model is to distribute whatever the income, I mean, you form companies and distribute the income according to the share you have put to the company, right? So those are the kind of structural, systematic solutions you can bring. And but still it will not work if you don't have organized passengers. So this is where we always fail. We have a very kind of a systematic scientific approach to solve this, but we have not sorted out the basic issues when dealing with humans. And then I think you need to deal with, you need to improve the situation of the drivers and the conductors. Their pathetic situation, they need to be given their professional rights, and welfare has to be sorted out. And there are also issues involved with the bus owners. Those issues have to be sorted out as well. So to sort out this entire transport problem and fix it, we need to pay attention to all these elements parallelly.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you do something in an ad hoc manner and do something else somewhere else. It will not help us to fix the problem. So I think that is the way we are thinking at the moment.
Multi-dimensional approach, but it will take a little time.
Yeah, it won't take too much time as well.
But it's not going to take 5 years. It
has to be less than 5 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, your own NTC structural issue has to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And then of course you go forward.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Dileepa, there is something which puzzles me. And this is actually, I don't think it's under your purview, but it's related. And this is that in most countries now, or more advanced countries, CCTV is a fact of life. In Sri Lanka, if you walk into a shop or a bank or a supermarket, we have CCTV. It's a fact of life. But on the road, we have very little in the form of CCTV, official CCTV, by the highways, by the city, the municipal councils or Pradesh Sabhas. It's just not there. In fact, when a crime happens, the police show up and they look around and they say, that shop has a CCTV, and they go and ask the shopkeeper. This could have happened at a junction, but very few junctions have official government CCTV, it's alarming in many aspects. Government needs to know what's going on. But also, if you don't have CCTVs on the streets, then it leads to chaos.
Yeah.
Now, in a country like Singapore, you hardly see a police officer because they are all monitoring the CCTVs. Yeah. And if you cut the white line, the double line, or run a red light, there's no police officer flagging you down. They simply deal with you. They know where you live, and that's sorted out. They will deduct the fine out of your bank account. It's a seamless system, and so people drive carefully.
Yeah.
But here in Sri Lanka, we don't have this CCTV, and the same goes. Let's say for not just the junctions, but let's take the railway stations. Now, Fort Railway Station, in the main building, you have CCTVs around it, but there are multiple platforms, and those are not covered. So you hear the railway announcement very frequently to watch out for pickpockets, because it says there are pickpockets in the railway station. But then, if there was a proper system of CCTVs, surely the pickpockets would be identified. I mean, there aren't thousands of pickpockets, there's just a few, and those guys are ruling the railway stations. And they are on the trains, and so this is, I don't understand why we don't go for this. And I know the street is not under you. It's a different matter. But why isn't the CMC doing this? Why aren't the Pradesh Sabhas doing it? Why hasn't Sri Lanka Railways done it properly? This is a requirement.
Yeah, I think CCTVs, they are at certain places. Now, for example, if we take inter-province transport, the area belong to us, transport buses. Most of them have CCTV inside the bus.
Right.
And we have CCTVs at the central private bus station in Colombo, and it was not working, and we are kind of replacing them, and we will replace them before the new year. So that is also going on. But I think, if I remember correct, the Western Province Transport Authority has fixed CCTV within their road network, intra-province road network, and maybe on the main roads. And so not only CCTV, even technology, other technology is also needed. For example, we have GPS.
Yes.
Inside buses, inter-province, and not all of them are having, but we are going to kind of make it a compulsory condition to the entire transport sector to have GPS, so that we can monitor. If you come to NTC, you'll see that there's a monitoring room, and you can monitor, each bus, how it is moving, and whether they are violating speed limit.
Inter-provincial buses.
Inter-provincial.
Right.
But I think that is being done also on provincial council basis as well. So we need to kind of make it systematic. And also another thing we need to consider is the card system instead of money.
Yes.
Maybe there can be issues at the beginning, but there can be cultural issues as well. Some people are not used to use a card, right? But India has done it. Now, even if you go to a small kiosk, you are paying using your QR code, even for a cup of plain tea.
Yes, the world has moved on. It's going cashless at a very fast pace, but in Sri Lanka we still have the conductor saying Rupial Pahak Nadda.
That's the thing.
And finally, we are almost out of time, but I have to raise this issue of passengers who are less able physically than others. You can call it differently abled, but it also includes elderly people. If you're over 65 or 70, you cannot board a speeding bus. Your life is at risk, because the driver will take off very quickly. You've only got one foot on the footboard, the other foot is still on the street. Then ladies, pregnant ladies wearing saris, they are all members of the public in Sri Lanka. They all have a right to go on public transport. So clearly, and of course the handicapped or differently abled people, which we have a very high percentage in Sri Lanka among nations in the world. So I hope that whatever initiatives you're going to do will include all this, because right now if a differently able person tries to board a train, he cannot do so, because the platform is about 3 feet lower than the carriage. So I'm not sure why we bought carriages which are 3 feet higher than the platforms. But if you are a lady who's 75 years old, you definitely can't climb up there on your own or climb down. So I mean, it's a human rights violation, and we have enough laws and regulations for all this. So I hope you'll be taking all of that into account as well.
Definitely. I think that we are not that our system is not that sensitive to issues faced by all these groups. One thing we have initiated, one initiative is that we are going to address this issue of gender-based violence
which
in
is
public transport.
Extraordinarily important aspect.
So we had a meeting recently with all parties involved, including media, legal people, women, Ministry of Women Affairs, everyone. And we have decided that we need to eradicate it, not just minimize.
Again, this is a societal issue which society needs to change, and the government is trying to change it, but in the end it's up to every one of us to change it.
So that initiative we have taken, but we are conscious of other groups, and we know that the system is not that sensitive to the needs of them. So we will also address that aspect as well.
Wonderful. And one final question, the corruption question, which is everywhere in Sri Lanka, and that's because of this web that has been woven, which makes it very very difficult to do anything. So you bribe, and somebody takes the bribe, and of course where people can make money like that, then people do jump at the chance. So we had this recent scandal, the Odyssey train, and of course if you try to buy the tickets, you are told tickets are sold out, but then online there are various people who are selling that. I think the ticket is 6,000 rupees, it's sold for 50,000 or 40,000, and of course this is not possible without the collusion of people within Sri Lanka Railways. And I think one IT technician has been arrested among the 3 or 4 people who were arrested so far, but one IT technician certainly couldn't do this on his own. Everybody else in that particular department would also be knowing about it, even if they weren't actually part of it. So these are issues which have to be dealt with. And so, you need to make an example as well, because otherwise it will just go on. But at the same time, the system has to be put in place that this won't happen. Now, Sri Lanka Railways actually has an amazing app where you can buy your tickets for third class, but you cannot buy for first class or second class, or commuter trains and so on, and of course trains like special trains like the Odyssey you can't buy. So So then it begs the question, why not? If this were all transparent and on their app, anyone could buy it.
Yeah.
Instead, it seems like this was pre-planned by various people. So again, a lot to unravel in this, isn't there?
Yeah, I think corruption is a serious issue. I think I forgot to mention when I listed down the issues involved in the transport sector. Now, this sector is considered a kind of a highly corrupt sector, right? From top to bottom, corruption. But thanks to the election of the new governments, this has kind of this is subject to self-control now, because the corruption at the top level has stopped, and it kind of affects the entire system. But corruption, I think, still is there, and we need to address that, and we need to eradicate it. The government is also introducing various mechanisms to prevent it. Now, for example, recently every ministry is asked to kind of form a committee to investigate corruption issues, even happened previously. And when it comes to our institution, now I'm telling them that corruption has to be stopped, and we are kind of moving step by step. Initially, I set an example, and I told my staff that there won't be any political interference in the future. We need to work according to our rules and regulations. There will be no political insurance, and no money involved when it comes to the top. So you need to also think about yourself, but that is the initial step. I think we need to introduce more steps depending on how we are progressing.
Well, that's wonderful to hear, and we will speak about that the next time you're on our show. I'm afraid we are out of time. My thanks to Dr. Dileepa Witharana, who is the chairman of the National Transport Commission, and thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away, because the news is coming up next. Have a good evening.